Welcome in, man. How we doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, that's what everybody says, but I don't necessarily know if I always believe it. But that's great to hear. I absolutely love that, man. And we were just kind of chatting before you jumped on. If you remember back to, gosh, what was that, July or August? It was very hot out at Ballard High School for Josh Meekin's Skills and Drills. We were out there hanging out. That was the first interaction. So this is a long time coming, man. Definitely glad to have you on the show. And who knew, before we get into all of this, who knew that the story of Evan Conley and his final season was going to be as versatile and as interesting as it was? I am so excited to ask about so many of the details of your versatility this season. But before we get into that, man, how's life? How's everything going since football wrapped up?
It's a lot different, man. I mean, playing college football and being in college is so much fun. And you think you're excited about becoming an adult and doing something new, and then you get about 2 weeks in, and you realize, when you have to wake up to go work out before work early in the morning, you're like, oh, I can do that. I did that for football. But during football, I could go home and take a 2 hour nap. Now I got to sit at my
Oh
desk,
yeah.
sit at my desk and work all day. It's a little different. So it's been an adjustment, but I mean, I'm still in grad school and I'm working a job that's keeping me pretty busy, and trying to just fill my time with friends and family, and try to do a lot of the things that I didn't get to do these last few years as being an athlete. So trying to fill my time so I don't think about how much I miss football.
Does it feel weird to be out of the football routine yet?
Yeah, all the way. I I will say it is nice on the weekends to like have absolutely nothing to do.
Oh, it's the
And
best.
What do
my
you what
body,
what do you do? Like,
I
what's a
still relish it,
typical?
Evan. Like I
What's a
wake
tip?
up on Saturdays and Saturday, wait till football season. There's nothing better than waking up, getting a good bologna, egg, and cheese sandwich and watching college game day. I mean, there's nothing better.
I can't argue with that. What does Evan Conley do on a Saturday without football?
um, well, kind of what Vince was saying is what it has been in terms of watching football, because we've had the playoff games on. So normally I take the morning, and uh, it's been, I don't know, I've only had a couple of them. One of the
Yeah.
mornings I went in and worked out at the gym for a little bit and came out and got the apartment together, cleaned up, so I didn't have to do any of that on Sunday. I could just rest all day Sunday, and then went over to my buddy Isaac Martin's, and we sat on the couch and watched football. And one of the days, I forget if it was Saturday or Sunday, but Saints is a Green Bay bar, and we got
Okay.
a couple guys that Isaac's a huge Green Bay fan. DJ Martin, who was our fullback, that was awesome for us this year. He's a big Green Bay fan, and I loved Aaron Rodgers as a kid, so I just grabbed a Green Bay sweatshirt and pretended like I was a lifelong fan, and had a blast like rooting for a football team, which is something I haven't done in a long time.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, man. It's Saints a good place, man. They got great wings. I don't know if you've tried them, but next time get the wings. Great spot there. One quick question just on Louisville in general. I know you're not from here, but a lot of athletes who come and play for Louisville ultimately just like end up settling here and staying and making their life here. Do you anticipate staying in Louisville, you think, long term, or you are open to kind of going wherever the next phase of your professional life takes you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to going wherever. I love Louisville. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think this is an awesome city, and I never thought I could enjoy being in a city until like I spent time in Louisville, and I learned that okay, there's different types of cities, right? I
We
growing
like to
growing
have a good time.
Huh? Yeah,
So
well,
yeah.
growing up around Atlanta, it's just that was so big and so fast, so much traffic, and it was just felt overwhelming at times to be in the city. And then you be in a city like Louisville, where there is some of that. It's smaller, so it's a little slower pace, but it's still big enough where you get your events. And then one of the things I love about Louisville is just the uniqueness of the neighborhoods, the history in it. It truly, there's a lot of community feel in Louisville that I think really makes it special. So, I mean, Louisville's a place that I love and would have no problem staying, but I'm going to be open to, you know, wherever my working career takes me. And maybe that's me going off somewhere and coming back to Louisville one day, when it's time to settle down and have a family, or maybe it's I stick around for a few years and go somewhere else. I'm not trying to get nailed down into too many plans right now.
Look at that, man. I love it. That's adulting at its finest. We'll figure it out when it comes. I think that's the hack to life. Is we'll just
So
figure
yeah,
it
just
out.
figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll pass that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, exactly. Bingo. I love that phrase. Use it a lot, especially when you have kids. We'll figure it out because they always have questions about everything. We'll figure that out.
Right. So now that with football that's in the rearview mirror now, have you had like a chance to kind of sit back and reflect on like the journey up to this point, especially like in the first few years at Louisville in the Satterfield era? And when you kind of reflect on some of those moments in your career, are there like any moments that kind of stand out to you, whether it be like a high or a low or something else, like, notable that's happened in your collegiate career?
Yeah, I mean, I tried not to get too wishy-washy with it all as it came down the end. And, I tried to start, taking some time and reflecting on it because football's been such a huge part of my life. I've played since I was 5 years old. So it's been so many memories that I love. And, obviously I had a lot of great moments on the field that first year. Like the Wake Forest game, I'll always be able to. It's a nice thing about YouTube. I'll always be able to show my kids, like, just pull that up on YouTube and just see your old man used to have it back in the day, right?
Right.
But
my favorite part about that moment, Evan, that game specifically, was what you ran over and told the sideline to tell Coach Ponce up in the press box. You were like, tell Coach Ponce, 5 flat, what, MFer? And I mean, that hands down, bro. Hey, I don't mean to put you on spot, but bro, that I was like, oh my God. Like that was
Legend.
great. Yeah, that
Legend.
legendary moment right there. Hands down.
yeah, Coach Ponce liked to mess with me and say I was slow all the time and stuff like that, which I guess compared to Malik I was, but I mean I'm not slow.
Right, but
Joke-
compared to Jack, you're
joke-
faster. So
Jokes on him. You were the
yeah.
Wildcat quarterback at the
That's
end.
right.
Right.
Look at me now, man, the Wildcat quarterback. I mean, seriously, that's incredible. And I'm just curious, like, what was it like? I know you played a lot over the first couple of years, just in terms of with injuries and things. But what was it like being just a backup quarterback to a guy like Malik, who, for the most part, I feel like you probably knew most weekends he was going to play like the whole game, and you probably weren't going to get in. But like, how did you like just keep yourself locked in during those days as a backup and just soaking it all in? Because when I talk to people who know you and who were around you as a football player, they always say like, "Oh, he's a coach at some point." Like that's just he is football. He soaks it up so easily all the time. But I would imagine as a backup, I would be like, man, I want to play. You know what I mean? Like that's got to be tough to stay locked in like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I wanted to play. I mean,
Yeah,
everyone
right.
play, right? And what's funny about that is like I don't want to coach. Like I don't have that desire to do that. But um, I think for me, like it's just I think too, it's a testament to my parents and to my dad especially that the way I was brought up is like, however you're doing it, you got to be all in on it, right? And it doesn't matter what result you're seeing from it right now. You don't know when that moment's going to be that you get that result. And that's in everything in life. That's not just in your sport. That can be in your job. That can be in just a hobby you have or a goal or aspiration you have in your life, in your personal life. Like if you don't, fully commit and be into those moments, you're not going to be prepared when you get them. And that's something that I think especially for me, that freshman year, they told me, hey, you're going to redshirt, like you're not going to play, da, da, da. And then all of a sudden it quickly became, you're the only quarterback practicing this week. So, and, I think back to like, there was times, in the spring where I sat there and I was just sitting in the playbook, learning it. And, I had other guys that were, in my class that were like, just didn't understand why I was doing that, knowing that we were all redshirting, right? And that was the plan. But I was prepared, and I was prepared for that moment. And I think I'm an obvious testament of like you don't know what's going to happen in your career, and you don't know when you're not going to get another moment to step on that field and play. So I mean, that's what I can't imagine how much differently I would look back on my collegiate career if I hadn't been prepared in those moments, if I hadn't put that time in, and I didn't have those great memories from the years where I did get some more significant playing time. So I think that's where it all comes down from.
You definitely prepared every week like you were going to be the starting quarterback. And that was like the most impressive thing, because it's hard for an 18, 19, 20-year-old, even a fifth, 6-year senior to prepare every week, when they might not get the opportunity to play to, prepare as if they are the starter. So, I mean, kudos to you for being able to do that every week. But I want to know, well, I kind of do know because we would be scrambling around trying to find your helmet and trying to get you warmed up. But those moments where we are throwing you in, what is going through your head? Are you thinking about where we are down a distance? What coach might be calling next? Or are you just trying to get loose, just doing your thing?
I don't even know how to describe it. Like when I played football, it was always one of those things where, because I knew I put the time in, I was never concerned about I didn't go in with concerns, right? Like I never had things in the back of my head that's like, oh crap, like let me get this. It was just, all right, let's get loose, let's go play. And like little things like down and distance, like what are we doing? Like those are some things that I had studied so much in my time in football, and knowing, hey, this is the smart thing in this scenario, this is not the smart thing in this scenario, that I didn't really I never was consciously thinking about those things. As a quarterback, those are things that have to become second nature, that you don't waste your time thinking on them, right? Lots of times sometimes I'd spend a few seconds thinking about a good little line to hit to the guys when I walk in the huddle. That's
yeah, for sure.
What was your best one-liner
You
that
gotta
you
have
hit with
something
the
witty,
guy?
man.
Yeah, I don't know. I normally come with some wit, but then probably some language I probably shouldn't use on the podcast, just to let the O line know that I'm ready to play, and you're gonna get all I got. Because that's the one thing that I'm very confident I can say about my time here is like I never did not give everything I had on a play. I mean, if I handed the ball off, I was going to go try and get a block. Or I was going to run the fake out as hard as possible. Like if
you were
someone was
supposed
trying
to.
If someone had me wrapped up in the backfield, I was going to fight and have 3 more guys come hit me and make it be a loss of 5.5 instead of 6, on a sack. Like, and that's just the way I played, and the way because I loved those guys that I played with, and I wanted to give them everything I had. And I think that allowed guys to be comfortable, especially with me playing as a freshman, that allowed them to be comfortable with me being in there, because they knew, hey, whether he's young, whether he's experienced, we're going to get everything we have from him. So it allows them to be like, okay, now we want to do that for him as well.
Hey, as soon as I see an 18-year-old kid go out there and have the balls to pull the ball and take it for 60 against Wake Forest and score a touchdown, I think I'm cool following that guy wherever.
It's Evan, that play, like, you talk about playing the position you played at the school you played at, right? Lamar Jackson, Teddy Bridgewater, these Chris Redmond, Dave Ragone, Stephon LaForth, of course, Johnny Unitas. Like, the play, though, like, do you realize the pantheon in which that moment in itself belongs in Louisville football history?
Every year
man?
has certain plays.
Right.
At 19, that's the play everybody thinks of in 2019, is you taking it to the crib.
Well, and if you think about it, until 2022, when you all beat Wake at home and they're a top 10 team, I mean, that's Satterfield's biggest win of his career at Louisville. I mean, they were top 25. Jamie Newman was dominating at the time. Like, that was a big game. And I know they fell off at the end of the year, but like that moment, the fact that this freshman quarterback on 4th and whatever it was, just took the ball and ran right up the field and scored. It's one of those moments that you never forget.
Yeah, I get reminded of it a time and again. It'd be funny. If I was out somewhere with Jack, and like guys would recognize Jack or Miller because they're both 6'5", 6'8" dudes. They're like, "Oh, you guys are on the football team." They'd be talking to him, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, and this is Jack would always try to pawn him off on me or something just because he knows to mess with me. He'd be like, oh yeah, this is Evan Conley, And then they'd be like, no way, like Wake Forest 2019. And I was like, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
that guy. You want to go buy me a beer?
Yeah, exactly right. There's that saying that you never have to buy a beer again. Like, has that held up? Have people been buying you beer since then? Well, not then because you weren't 21 then, but
every once in a while,
yeah,
not so. I mean, I'm not the most like if you see me out on the town, like you wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, that's definitely a college football player. I kind of
right.
rock the generic. Like if I was a video game character, it'd be like generic white guy 3 look kind of.
Oh, we went over that. You and I'd be lucky to have a rating in our NCAA, like you said.
Oh man, that's
don't
great.
say that. Derek Dorsey used to tell me he played on me at NCAA all the time in the updated roster. Okay.
Oh
Look,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
I'm sure that speed's sneaky quick, man, as they say.
Deceptively
Deceptive.
quick.
Yeah, exactly. Right. See, that's what it is. Well, let me ask you this before we start talking about 2023 and really what this season evolved into for you. I want to ask you a little bit because I know people are aware that you went through some injuries, and we don't really necessarily have to go into specifics unless you'd like. But can you just share what your injury journey has been like in terms of the rehab and getting back to be able to play football? I mean, we've talked a lot this season on the show. Again, we're going to get into this, and I'm excited. But when we talk about our show gets excited about some of the nuances of football, like a quarterback playing special teams. Like that gets this show fucking riled up. Like, give me that guy 7 days out of 7 days, right? But how do we get from you having some serious injuries to doing that? Like, just tell me what that rehab process was like and how hard it was for you to, I'm sure there was moments where you probably felt like, is it worth it to come back? And what was that kind of like for you?
Yeah, so it was really, really tough. And it was a really long process. Because we kind of got stuck in this weird spot where we didn't have a lot of quarterbacks on the roster. And the injury I had, you don't get very good imaging of it necessarily. So when I started having the issue, and it's like, obviously, you don't want to go straight to surgery. So we tried some different options with injections and that sort of thing. And like the initial imaging I got, the doctors were like, I don't know if this is necessarily a surgery case or not. And so we were like, it got to the point where it was like, okay, well, if we do surgery now, there's no chance you're ready for the season at all. And it was just me and Malik at the time, right? And it was one of those things where it was like,
That 2020? That the 2020?
I think it was 21.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 21. Because it was just me and Malik. Brock came in like the middle of the summer. So like you can't go into it assuming that, some guy you've never had on the team before is going to be prepared. So it was one of those things where I could play through it and it's not going to make it any worse per se. I don't necessarily agree with that.
You can always get a little bit worse.
It became a pain tolerance thing, right? Yeah. It's like if you can, like you could play on it. Like I could run and I could run around and play football, but then I couldn't walk once I sat down and it all inflamed and tightened up. So what I had was on my hip where the femur sits in the ball and socket joint, like it's supposed to be here and then sits in all nice and pretty, right? Mine had like a bone growth on it like this. So it sat in there. And as a quarterback, you're rotational. So that rotation drove that, it's called a cam lesion, drove that cam lesion up into the hip bone or the actual pelvis. And it tore through the labrum completely. And it tore up the cartilage. And ended up having at the end of the season, because it just got worse and worse and worse. And it got to a point where like I wasn't even practicing. I was just showing up on game days and was just in case, right?
Yep.
And surgery ended up being about twice as long as they thought it was going to be, just because you can't see it good. And they got in there. It was, I think Doc said it was the biggest bone growth he had shaved down. And the labrum, I have 5 anchors in one side, and I had the same surgery on my left side as well 3 months later.
I remember that. I remember the day you came and and you were like, yeah, Vince, because that whole time prior to this, guys, I still have videos on my phone of you in the weight room and we're trying to figure out why the ball's not coming out of your hand right. And we're thinking it's a release thing, if you remember.
No,
And
that was different. That was when I had tearing in my rotator cuff.
oh, okay. That was
no.
another injury.
Just that other bad injury. Yeah.
The
no big
other
deal.
injury.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
It
football.
wasn't super bad. It just was I needed some rest on it, which actually timed up with COVID, so that actually helped. But
regardless, the fact that you played with that, I mean, Brian Hudson this whole year was one of those guys we always heard about, just trying to get him to Saturday and he's going to go out there and give you everything you got. And I mean, that's a football guy right there. I mean,
oh, dude, Brian Hudson's
you and Brian Hudson, like guys like that go out there. I mean, remember Boosie Whitlow?
Don't group me in with Brian. That's not.
Well,
That's
I
not
mean,
fair to
guys
him.
like
Put
Boosie
Brian
Whitlow,
up a
all
little
you
higher,
guys,
please.
like the guys that don't practice halfway through the week because they're so banged up and still show up on Saturday, like running out there like a bat out of hell, like that. It's insane. It's one of those things where you sit back, personally, as me, the guy who's had 2 ACL surgeries and wasn't tough enough to come back from the second one. I'm sitting over here like, I mean, this is insane what some of these guys are trying to do right here. It's insanely competitive and it's insanely, I mean, what you go out there and do for your teammates. Yeah. It's awesome.
And like Vince can tell you, like he said, he's been through the surgeries. When you have a surgery, like you don't ever come back the same. Like you're never going to truly feel like you did before that surgery in terms of your athletic ability. So like that's kind of how I got rolled into, the role I was in this year, where I finally got healthy enough where I could like run and do things athletically, and honestly was in some of the better shape and putting up some of the best athletic numbers I had done in a long time. But I had a really hard time with rotation. So I got to a point where very rarely did I ever feel like good where I could actually clear my hips on a throw, just because there's so much junk in there and I'd get so much inflammation. So it got where like I'd lost some juice on my ball, I'd lost some yardage on my deep ball. And like there's times where I'd have a good day and it'd click and I'd be like, I don't know, maybe it's back.
Coming back. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And then the next day it'd be like, oh nope, I can't walk today. That's what it was.
Hey, you got one more year, Evan.
Yeah, man. I mean,
let's go throw some balls right now, and we can work it. Right?
There's a position for you somewhere, man. There's got to be like, I never played serious football, but like I envision what my career would be now. It's finding a role where you can play, but nobody notices you're out there, right? You can just like kind of go through the motions. Say you're a player, you're on the field, you're still playing, but you're not really in the action, right? That would be so. I envision that would be what it would be for you. Is like, I don't know. I can't think of one now because every player in football matters. That's the thing, right? But like a fullback, I don't know. A fullback on a passing play. I don't know.
We matter.
Yeah, but on a running play, you're much more impactful.
So
my body is very happy that I'm done.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Pickleball is calling your name. Pickleball and golf.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm a stud at pickleball now.
I believe it.
Hey, so that's my sport now. That's my. Hey, I'm 5-minute walk from Tyler Park. I'm down there playing with those old ladies, and I'm running that court, man. Except for there's a couple of those ladies that can whoop me, man. It's impressive.
Yeah, they practice a lot. But this topic about the injury, that's actually a good segue for my next question. So you mentioned how the injury kind of played a role in you transitioning into the role you had in 2023. At one point, did the coaching staff or Jeff Brom or Brian Brom or whomever come up to you and say, hey, we're going to make you the Wildcat quarterback? And what was your reaction to that? Because I assume with like everything that's going on with the injury, you were probably a little bit more keen to that because of the, uncertainties with the injury in your arm there. Like how did that whole process come about and how'd that go over?
Honestly, I wasn't super surprised about it because Jack told me there was a good chance they do that after, because like when I came back from winter workouts, so I know Coco, maybe people had told you this after your ACL, where they're like, you may not feel good, but like all that rehab work you do, like you'll come back, you'll be like the fastest you've ever been, like because you've been doing all those little, and like that was honestly truly how I felt like in those January, February months with the workouts. and I was killing those.
You're in the best shape of your life. Best shape of my life was after rehab because I've been doing so much of that stuff. To your point, Evan.
Yeah, and because there's a lot of little muscles that you don't work all the time that when you're in rehab, and when you get to the athletic level you're at in college sports, like you need it's working those little muscles that give you that, tiny little growth that gets you a tiny little bit faster, because you're not going to get that much faster once you.
And Evan and I need that. We need that tiny little bit.
Yeah, but like through workouts and stuff, like it was pretty clear that like athletically I was moving the best of all the quarterbacks, and like I was putting up really good numbers just in general, not even just for quarterbacks, just for
skill position guys in general.
Yeah, I was in with combos, but skill position too. I know when we ran like they were 300s. They weren't full 300s, but we ran 300s, and I don't know. I don't know if anybody was outpacing me on those. Those were we were moving on those, but I wasn't overly surprised about it. And they told me about it in the spring, and in the spring they had used me some in like an athletic QB period where we just did some athletic QB plays. And I know Jeff had made some comments to me like on a couple plays where I had taken off and run, and he was like, "Yeah, buddy, that looked fast, man." Yeah.
Hey, and that's coming from Jeff. Jeff was the speed guy now, so that's a good compliment.
That's what, and so that's why and so like, and they'd done it in the past, so I had no clue how much it was going to get used. I had no clue if it was ever going to get used, but I was like, I'll take it, man. It gives me a shot, right?
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
And kind of speaking of those new roles, there's transitioning from, the traditional, like just quarterback to Wildcat quarterback. And then there's taking a role on special teams. Like, whose idea was that? Because, like, obviously, there's few football players out there who haven't played on special teams, but quarterbacks are typically not
off limits.
I'm willing to bet you were the only quarterback playing special teams
in the country, in the world,
over the past 5 years.
Evan, in the world,
not in the world. Taysom Hill does it every Sunday.
That is not a quarterback.
Fair.
As
that's
a Lamar
fair.
Jackson podcast, that is not a quarterback.
That's fair, man. That's a good point. So you're one of two. That's pretty unique.
No, I mean, it honestly started from. So Coach Mads had been here previously.
I knew it. I
kind of had a feeling that's where that was coming from.
Yeah, and Mads is an awesome dude, man. I loved being with him, and the years I spent when he was here to begin with, and then this past year, and he's awesome. And it kind of started with joking about doing it on some stuff for punt, being in the shield so we could run fake punts, or just the fact that I'd be back there would keep them from pressuring all out.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, man, whatever you need, dude. And then he like kept joking about it, and I was like, I'm serious, man. Like whatever you need me to do, like I'll do it, man. You want me to run down on kickoff, I'll run down on kickoff. If you want me to, whatever, right?
I mean,
so
kickoff return was the wildest one seeing you on. I hated being on kickoff return.
That was awful. That was the worst thing I've ever had to do in football. Kickoff return, front line kickoff return. You got to sprint 30, 40 yards backwards and then turn and flip. And then there's a guy that had a 10-yard head start from you running before you could start, because you had to see the ball kicked, right? So you had to make sure that the ball got kicked and wasn't a surprise onside. And then you had to turn and run, find your guy who hasn't had to stop at all, and just bam. And it's like, it was all about, my whole thing is I was just trying to outsmart it. Just find leverage. Hey, if my return's going right and my dude wants to run to the left, that's perfect. I'm going to get right on his shoulder and just run with him right on by, because he can get as close as he wants to the tackle. If he doesn't make it, that's all that matters.
That's so funny. So that's the thought process of a quarterback on special teams. The thought process of a fullback is just, run your 30, 40 yards, hope you can count that far back, and then just turn around, panic a little bit, and go through the first guy you see. I mean, that's so.
Oh my gosh. I love that.
It truly all got started because there was like a punt block day where Maz was like, you can jump in if you want. And I was like, on my first try, I blocked a punt. So that was how it got started.
Yeah, you gotta
Are
go it now.
Are you one
Yeah.
of those guys who's just good at everything? And the first thing they do, like, because I'm one that like I gotta have a lot of tries to get good at something. Like, are you the guy who
No.
they're just good at everything? Is that
No,
you just got
I used to think I was. And then as I came to college and I got around to guys that are a lot more athletic than me and a lot better at things a lot faster than me, I learned I wasn't that guy. But no,
But
I
keep
mean, it's just one of those things, just like I was saying earlier. It's just, I think it comes down to, and a lot of special teams comes down to like your willingness to give effort, right? And
Yeah.
there's some guys that are willing to do that and some guys that aren't. If you guys ever get a chance to watch the special teams film from last year, if you ever are bored, watch number 0 on kickoff, Chris Bell, who is a starting receiver for us and was also on all of our special teams. And him and like Maurice Turner, those guys, you can't find guys that give more effort than they did on special teams, right? And it's just the more willing you are to do that, the more success you'll have at it. And you have to have good special teams to be
man.
a good team. So
Chris
keeping
came
on
out.
that keeping on that topic of you playing multiple different positions in the Wildcat quarterback. We were talking earlier with Dave Skull about the jump pass and how angry and frustrated we were that play never
Yes.
was executed.
Come on, Evan.
Was it in the playbook, Evan?
Come on.
Of
I need to
course
know
it's-
this. Yeah, give me the tea on why we never got that.
No, we had a bunch of different things off of it. It's just one of those things where it's like you can only call so many plays, right?
That
Yeah.
hurts.
And
Did you could have audibled it though. He gave you.
You
I
could have
know he
pulled the
did.
Jameis Winston.
Yeah. Oh, that was
Yeah,
great.
man. Be like, sorry, Jeff, we're going with my play, which is me throwing the ball.
well, the last I guess not the last 2, but 2 of the last 3s that we ran were touchdowns. So
They were.
I was at that point, I was
You
like,
got
I'm
hot.
just gonna trust him to keep going on this. But
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, good point.
That is
Yeah.
a good point. I will say though, and I don't mean this tongue in cheek. I think that when you talk about what Louisville football is and when you talk about the character of the guys who have come through that building and have given everything they have, I think that you'll forever go down as one of the guys that's mentioned as, not necessarily like, like you would Lamar or a Malik or anybody, but the effort, the willingness to give everything you have is what this program is all about. And I wonder if you've seen that in your 5 years of the fans, as you go on your career, they start to like it, love you a little bit more because you give that effort. You come back from an injury that's as hard as you did, and then you give what you did this past year and ultimately make a major difference. I mean, you don't win some of the games and be in the games without you coming in there and making those plays. And I remember Murray State. You came in, I think you were the first quarterback off the bench. And I remember at the time being like, okay, all right, I like this. Like, I didn't think Evan was going to play this year. I thought that, he was just back, maybe get his degree, and it would be whatever the case is, recovering from that injury. And then I don't think it was until, I can't remember what it was, Miami is the next carrier, whatever it was. And in between then, the special teams thing had kind of happened. And it's just like, man, this dude is like, he stuck around. He's still here. He's giving literally everything. And this is like the reward is winning, 10 games, getting to go to the ACC championship. So I mean it seriously when I say thank you for everything you did. It may not, for you, it may not feel like it was the world, but I know fans appreciate guys that play with the zeal and the effort that you did at football, man. I really mean that.
yeah, I appreciate that. That means a lot. It really does.
Great. Well, let's talk about this season, okay? Because I've got a lot of questions. I'm curious from a quarterback perspective, what's it like going from, Pete Thomas, Scott Satterfield to Brian Brom, Jeff Brom? What was that like in the quarterback room? What were the dynamics like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot different. I mean, honestly, and from my perspective, this is kind of how things work in college football is you have 2 trains of thought, right? You have coaches that are like, okay, we're going to have what we do and we're going to be really, really good at it. And then you have coaches that are like, we're going to have a little bit of everything and we're going to have all the options. And obviously the last two coaches have been 2 ends of the spectrum on that, right?
Sure.
Sat and was great. And I think what was interesting coming into this was how much film breakdown or how many plays we had that Brian would sit in the meeting and be like, "Yeah, we actually stole this from you guys when we were doing a study on Satterfield because they wanted to revamp their whole zone scheme, and so they
That's
sat
the guy
down
to
and they were
copy off
doing a
of if you're
study.
doing zone.
Yeah, exactly. So the zone scheme, but adding the more elements, and especially from a quarterback perspective, there was a lot more responsibilities and protection, a lot more responsibilities, run checks, audibles. I mean, there was plays that got called in that were automatic. We're calling this formation, and you're looking out there and you're giving them the routes before the play based off the look, right? Like there's stuff like that, and it was definitely different, and obviously learning the offense makes it a big challenge, and felt like things were sometimes swimming a little bit, which was nice. It was a fun challenge. It was nice to have something that was a little challenging. It would be fun to be. I would have loved to. The thing I would have loved about being back in the quarterback room this year was getting to experience the coaching from a more in-depth perspective than just learning the playbook. But because you have to spend so much time learning the playbook your first year in this offense, that so many of the nuggets or the more quarterback coaching points and stuff like that from Brian, maybe we necessarily didn't have all the time in the world for.
What was it like? What was it like getting the freedom to be able to go out there and call your own routes based off of the look?
I mean, that wasn't really something that the other guys got. That was more of a Jack thing. But
Damn, Evan.
well, just in terms of like when they scripted it, that's just how it was. They did it with the ones, right? Like,
That's
and it's
right,
not like
yeah.
I was in there
Yeah.
for a ton of plays, but
Makes sense.
it was cool. The first time I made a run check, this was the first time I made a run check since high school. Then that worked, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I remember doing that back in the day. That was fun.
What was
Because
what was the biggest challenge for you learning the offense this year? Just, I mean, it's always I remember when Sat and them came in, I was like, all right, because Petrino's offense is, very similar to Jeff's and everything. And I was like, I was
just
looking at Sats and I was like, I can learn this. This is it's my
it's
kind of
just the
football right here.
terminology, and and I mean, how it was, Coco, because you essentially, they're the same a lot. They're similarly inspired.
Yeah.
Katrina and Brom. The terminology doesn't necessarily make sense.
No.
Right? Like
It's
it's
like they
just
threw a dart at a
random. It's
creative
just
name.
random stuff that got written down. It's like this is just what it is because that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Some stuff there's some flow to it, but like that was the difference with Sats. They were very big on like, hey, if there's these letters in the word, it means this or some correlation.
Pirates opposed the posting out. And we're
Yeah.
singing it like that.
Yeah. So, and then just the other difference of from a pass game perspective, it wasn't okay. You learn the concept as a 3-man concept or a 2-man concept, and then that can apply to however we line up in the formations. Right? It was okay. And it was the same play call, right? You just change the formation, and hey, these are the rules for 3x1,
Yeah.
2x1,
Yep.
or 2x2. Sorry, or if the tight ends attached, whatever. With Brahms' offense, it's a totally different play call. If the routes are exactly the same in the exact same places, but the letter of the guy that you draw up on the sheet or on the whiteboard is different, is a totally different play. Even if you erase the people and all the lines stayed the same.
That's wild. That's wild and very difficult. I mean, I remember Robbie Bell, my freshman year, he was my roommate, he was a center at the time and trying to learn Petrino's offense. A lot like you, I was the other teammate. Like, why are you doing this right now? We're all redshirt. And Robbie's over here drawing up every single detail of the play. And I mean, he would cover his whole mirror, the wall-to-wall mirror, and it was.
Well, that's
it was
why Robbie's
insane.
gonna be a great coach, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, he's already killing it at UNLV. So.
Yeah, he's in that go-go offense, man. Have you seen that?
It's a fun style of football. I mean, I think it's really interesting to see some of the guys from those early teams go out now and start coaching and getting their professional careers. especially a guy like him at UNLV. What a fun place to be. Let's talk about a little bit about the offense this season in particular. One thing I'm curious about is just kind of, watching and being, it sounds like a pal. What was kind of like your driver's the passenger side view of watching Jack develop into, obviously he had familiarity with Jeff from playing at Purdue years ago, but kind of come into Louisville, ingrain himself in the city and become the guy. I mean, it was pretty clear he was going to always be the guy, but what was that journey like just from the whole season of watching him kind of, deal with a lot of success as a team, but maybe some challenges as from an individual performance standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, and I tell this to everybody, man. And I get that down the stretch, like things didn't go how we all wanted them to pan out. And so, as a quarterback, when things are good, you get praise, and when things don't go good, you get ripped, and that's part of being a quarterback. But he doesn't get enough credit for what he did, because what nobody can see, what from a fan perspective, which you can't expect the fans to see this because they're not there, is they don't understand the fact that I don't even know if we'd be able to put an offense out on that field if it wasn't for him, right? Like
Exactly.
he was in there from day one, coaching the offense to all of us. We were sitting down in meetings. He was on the whiteboards. He was running through it. We were sitting down a couple hours every day with the entire offense. And even through all that, I mean, there was times early on in the season where we were calling plays in the huddle, and he would call the play and then tell every dude what they were doing, because they would all just look at him like,
I mean,
and
that's how it would be with Petrino too, man. That's why Lamar became so deadly when he was, because he learned the entirety of the playbook after his first year.
yeah. And that's not a shot at any of the other skill guys, but like, you can't expect them to be at the same level as he was being in the offense now. His fifth year in it. Yeah, his fifth year in the offense. And the other thing is he was the smartest football player I've been around, right? Like, and he didn't leave the facility all day. He was in there. He sat in the quarterback room and watched film, and really all of us did. And um, from a leadership perspective, he was willing to take on the roles that he took on. And I think one of the big things is, you saw, especially that middle of the season, Notre Dame, Duke, Virginia Tech, where we kind of realized, hey, we can just like line up and run the ball straight at these guys, because our offensive line is really good, and our fullbacks really good, and our running backs are really good, and we can be successful. And like, there was a couple games there. I think the Duke game, he was like 11 of 13 with 2 drops, and the Virginia Tech game was
Yep.
like
Yeah.
11 of 12 with a throwaway. Like, and there was where he turned in this role where it was, hey, this is what we're asking you to do to win the game. And it's not the pretty thing to do if you're trying to go play at the next level. And there was never a moment where he complained about it. There was never a moment where he was like, man, I wish we were throwing the ball more. He was like, man, this is awesome. We're winning games. And at the end of the day, that's all he cared about, was winning the next game that showed up. And it's unfortunate that, we didn't get the wins down the stretch that we wanted. But I truly, truly do not believe that season is anywhere near as successful as it is without Jack Plummer. Like, just
Yeah.
being realistic, as someone who was in there every single day and was around him a lot.
When you look at kind of the way that the season went and kind of where some of the, I don't want to say struggles, but where some of the things kind of became a little bit different maybe than what they were planned for in terms of personnel, particularly talking about Jawar's injury and Jamari Thrash's injury. We spent a lot of this episode talking about one of the struggles was it never seemed like a number 2 receiver ever was able really to kind of come along and support Jamari, knowing he had that pretty serious injury that was kind of limiting his play. How did the offense kind of go about compensating for that? It seemed like later towards the season, Jack spread the ball out a lot more and would, there'd be games where he would throw it to 8, 9, 10 different receivers, but nobody would really have, big numbers. But so how did that kind of go about in being able to say, okay, you can't throw the ball to Jamari 14 times a game. We got to get everybody else involved. And here's the challenges and here's how we overcome that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we knew that was an issue, and Jamari is an incredible, incredible football player, and he showed that. And you could see Jawar clearly was not healthy down the stretch, and and we realized that. And I don't think there was ever necessarily an emphasis put on, hey, you have to replace Jamari and you have to replace Thrash, and I think everyone just tried to, hey, we understand that if we try to push and we try to overdo things, that it's like, that's where
You have to run the offense at the end of the day. Just run the offense.
Exactly.
And,
So at the end of the day, you got to trust the offense. You got to trust what you're doing. You got to trust what the coaches are asking you to do. And you just got to go out there and try to execute. And that's one of those things that I can truly say, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Those guys that went out there, like they went out there to execute the job as hard as they can, and Florida State, we kind of went out and got our ass kicked. I think that was more of I'll say it. That was a testament to how good that defense was. And I mean, I truly believe you give that Florida State team Jordan Travis and you put them in the CFP, there's a good chance they're good chance they're coming out with the trophy.
Yeah.
And you can't you got to ignore the Georgia game, because realistically Georgia's probably the best team in the country last year, right? It's like if Georgia Bama plays 11 times, Georgia probably wins 10, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So playing a pissed off Georgia team with 30 dudes out, and I think maybe like 6 total starters playing, if that, not even that.
The game's a wash.
Yeah. Again, like that defense, the way they played, if they had played with that same level of intensity and that same level of fire, that understanding, because the thing is, they realized, hey, our offense isn't going to do much. The only way we can get in is if we win this game. And if we want to get in, we have to win this game. It's going to be because of the defense. And you could see they fully embraced that and just went after it. I mean,
outside the dudes,
played every single snap. I mean, how often? And I think the Fisk guy might have too. Like, how often do you see a defensive lineman play every single snap of a game?
Outside the dudes, what was the most difficult thing, scheme-wise, you would say, that presented us Florida State that game?
I think Florida State's scheme-wise necessarily wasn't a great matchup for us this past year, just in terms of what we wanted to do. And I think at the end of the day, their defensive backs, specifically their safeties, were phenomenal tacklers, and they were aggressive to getting in the box. And they let them play aggressive outside and get physical outside and grab and hold. And they just established, hey, we're not calling anything this game. And sometimes you have that. And realistically too, we expected that, because you have to think going into that game, hey, we're not going to get a single call, because the only way the ACC benefits is if Florida State wins that game. And I'm not saying don't make this sound like I'm saying the refs are why we lost that game. Please don't cut this up.
No, nobody is.
But I'm saying, like, you expect that for that game, right? So you got to know, hey, it's going to be physical. And they were good. Like, sometimes you got to sit down and you got to give them credit for what they did, as much as you have to recognize, hey, this was what we left on the field and what we could have done and should have done better. So, and then it's tough to just get out of a rhythm, and sometimes it's tough to get out of that funk.
It was interesting to watch, but and still the kind of, not to take away from the fact that the game was very close and it could have gone a different way. It's still very cool to see Louisville get to that moment. And I'm sure for you that had to have been cool, considering, what you've been through with the year in 2020 and some of the struggles and, throughout that entirety, even to the fact I would imagine for you, having been in some of those seasons where I think we've talked a lot about it this show, and we've gotten criticized a lot for it, but you all are a couple of bounces away in 22, 19 from being like a really, highly regarded football team with ranking and things like that. But this year for you, it's got to be cool to see those games like, the Virginia game, the Miami game, like y'all came back and won. Like that's awesome. And so for that, I'm sure that was probably a very cool moment to be able to go to Charlotte. But let me ask you this. Let's turn the dials forward a little bit. You'll be watching from the sidelines like us next year. You can enjoy one of those wonderful Cardinal Stadium beers.
Sitting up there with me and Isaac.
I would highly encourage you to try one of those. It doesn't even have to be the Cardinal. Any beers from the Cardinal Stadium taps, Evan, they're just they're beautiful. They are wonderful. They make the football experience better. But you'll be sitting there watching the team just like us. And I've been listening to some of the things you've talked about, and it sounds like this year, one of the things that really helped you all was the familiarity with Jeff coming from Jack, Eric, some of these guys that came in from Purdue. That kind of goes out the window next year. You bring in a new quarterback and Tyler Shuck from Texas Tech, who, is going to be a 6th, 7th year guy, just like kind of like Jack was, an older, more mature guy. But I'm curious more of your perspective of two guys who were in the room with you, and that's Pierce Clarkson and Brady Allen. I'm really curious in your opinion, do you think those guys are going to be in the mix of competing and really taking that next step to follow behind Jack after that year of sitting, watching, learning, soaking, and then being able to become a starter? Because both those guys are 4- or 5-star quarterbacks. They're super talented dudes.
Yeah, and then you got Harrison Bailey in there too, and all those guys in there, they're very talented dudes. They can all sling the ball around the place. They all care a lot about football. They spend a lot of time in it. And everything I've heard, because I got together with some of them this past weekend, like they have nothing but good things to say about Tyler as well. And just knowing, what Brian does and how good of a coach he is, knowing that he's going to have all of them prepared and ready to play. And, I truly think any of those guys in there, because like, if you look at Tyler and what I haven't done a ton on it, but from what I've seen and heard is that, hey, when he plays, he's really stinking good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And so I hope that he does, because I don't ever want him to be hurt, right? But I truly believe in all those guys. I do, because I know the way they work. I know the time they put in, and the talent they have matches their work ethic, right? And that's such an important thing. And you can have all the tools you want, but if you're not willing to put in the work and the time, then it's not going to work for you. And all those guys do that. And so that's the important thing.
You said something interesting there about Brian Brom, obviously being your all's quarterback coach, but like to me, that's my childhood like hero. What was that like? Being in a,
I mean,
was he like, oh yeah, like I set this record.
That's my picture over the wall right over there.
Yeah.
Dude, he would love to like throw him in every once in a while, right? Like he'd always like to be like, hey Jack, like if you want to like break my single game passing yards record, like that'd be really cool, man. Like you can break my record.
It's 474 yards, Jack.
Good luck.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
What do you know what it is? I thought it was
No,
more.
I have no idea. No
I think
clue.
it's
But
5 something.
I would believe it.
I
I
could
mean,
be
you got to
wrong.
think, man, back in the day, they used to sling that football around. They had, but between the years of Bobby 1.0 until Tutu, they didn't have another 1,000-yard receiver during that entire window, man. If that tells you anything about what they did at the wide receiver and quarterback position, it was so much fun. And now you got Brian here, Harry Douglas is on ESPN, man. You got Eric Wood all over the place. Like these guys it's crazy. It really is. Vince is right. Like I was going to ask you, how much film of himself did he show you all? Did he ever like,
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, because I was going to say you're going to love this secret. So one of the best dynamics, right, is the Brian Jeff brother aspect, right? Because normally no one can say anything to Jeff, right? Like when Jeff gets ticked off, you guys seen it, he gets going, right?
Right.
Brian's his brother, so it's a little different, right? You can go back and forth with your brother a little bit, even if he is your boss. So they were arguing about this play and like what the read was and what they'd done in the past. And Brian was like, "No, dude, I'm telling you, you got to look here first." He's like, "Why? We would have never thrown that there." He goes, I threw a touchdown on this play to that route because I peeked it first." And he was like, "No, you didn't." So the good thing is our film system goes all the way back through Brian.
Oh yeah.
So he went and he pulled it up and like dropped it on his desk and was like, "Here it is. There you go. See that? That's me throwing a touchdown, just like I said."
That's gold. That's
I'm
gold.
here. I'm so here for that, man. That is a level of, I don't want to call it pettiness, but that is a level of like, I'm right and you're wrong, that my wife and I have a very
That's-
similar dynamic.
That's
I would go back to the
that's
film
sibling
vault.
rivalry type stuff right
Yeah,
there.
man. I love that.
That's
That
insane.
is great, man. Well, go ahead, Matt.
So obviously Shutt comes in, but he's far from the only transfer coming in. They've got, I think, what, 24 now, and several of them are like high quality.
You don't know. You don't say.
I write about this stuff and I've lost track.
Yeah, it's insane. I don't know how you keep track of it.
It's a lot. I don't get a lot of sleep. But anyways, like a lot of these guys are like really high quality stuff, really coming from great schools, have a lot of talent, production, experience. I mean, right now they've got the number one transfer portal class in college football, and it's not even close. And then they bring a handful of really productive guys. It's another year where Brom kind of has his footing, and the staff, everyone comes back, which I'd be hard pressed to find like another Power Five program that retains everyone pretty much. So, what do you think, with all that being said, what do you think is going to be like the ceiling for this team in year 2 under Brom? Because obviously they've already gotten to the ACC championship, but do you realistically see this as the team that can take the next step to say not only getting back to the championship game, but winning that and maybe making a run at an outside shot to make the 12-team college football playoff?
So you may not like this answer, but just with the way college football has gone, I have no clue. I mean, everybody has so much turnover and so much change. Like, other than, Ohio State and Georgia, I don't know who's going to be good next year. Like,
Yeah, fair.
and there's just so much. The thing about the transfer portal is that it's awesome and it's given a lot of guys opportunities. Like a guy like Tyler Hudson, that was under recruited, an absolute stud, right? Got an opportunity to come up and show that he can play at the Power 5 level and still ball at the Power 5 level. But it's opened up this window where we now have like true college free agency, and you have all this turnover, and so much of what makes a team good, not necessarily what makes a team good, but what makes the difference between a good team and a great team is how those players mesh, how that locker room situation is. And that's why not just coaching staff wise was such a difference for us this year, but also I have not been a part of a transfer class that meshed so well with the team and with each other as we did this past year, right? And the amount, and you don't always see that with transfers, that they're super excited to be bought into what's happening, because sometimes dudes are transferring for a reason. That's not just because
We've never seen that.
yeah. Sometimes the reason you weren't playing was not because the coach just randomly had a vendetta out for you, but it was a
the random vendetta.
You didn't deserve to be playing.
Bro, I don't know
right?
why I'm in the doghouse.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm in the doghouse. I only don't stay any extra, do extra
don't show up
work,
to
and
study
show
all
up, and
that,
I've only
yeah.
only been late to 6 lifts this week.
Oh,
But dude, I mean, there are a lot of good pieces in place and a lot of good leadership pieces in place. Guys like Ashton Gelati, guys like Maurice Turner, Michael Gonzalez, Renato Brown. You got guys Josh Black and Austin Collins that have been there a long time, that are really solid pieces, not just for our offensive line in terms of playing in depth, as well as just human beings in that locker room and leadership. And as long as guys are buying in and understanding, hey, like, there's a reason we were successful, and it's not just because we went out on the field and ran these plays, right? There's a certain things we did. Like, I mean, we as an offense hung out more as a group than we ever had, right? And some of that was forced, not forced because I'm not trying to say it was, we had to do it.
Hang out with Jack, man. Everybody else is being mean to him, Evan. Gotta hang out with him.
Sorry, I was just trying not to get us an NCAA violation about like meetings or something. It was just out of necessity because we all realized, hey, we need to spend extra time together learning this offense. So that was part of it. And then that morphed into, hey, all right, we're done for the day. You guys want to come to the pool and I'll grill out like 45 burgers? Or
Bros, man.
Brian's smoking ribs at his house with his wife and having all the offensive line. And we did do that. That was fun. I made all the quarterbacks come and help like serve the food because Brian told me about it. And he was like, do the quarterbacks want to come? I was like, yeah, I'll make them all help too. So it can be like, hey, you guys talk for us all the time. Let's serve you guys some food.
I can tell you, I bet Brian's wife really appreciated that. Really appreciated you bringing hands on deck, man. Because if you're bringing people to feed, especially of that size, like you got to have some help cleaning up. So I would imagine my wife would have appreciated that. That's a great gesture for you. You're an adult. Look at you, man. You're an adult.
I am
He's been like that since he showed up on campus, man. I was more immature than he was. His freshman
He's like, I'm your coach, and you might see me at the bar Friday night. Don't say anything to Sat when you see me in practice the next day. That's why everybody likes you, Vince. See, you're just one of us, man.
We
just one of us.
had a good time signaling together, Evan. We did.
I believe it, man.
Yeah, we did. Dude, no, Vince was awesome to me my freshman year because I remember, you know, it was strange that some of the most time I spent with people my first semester was Devontae Pete, who was, how old was Petey? Like 23, 24?
Yeah, Pete was like a 6-year senior.
And how old were you?
I don't know, like 21, 22-ish.
Yeah. Like, and I was 17 at the time, right? When I got there. And like, because Vince was always willing to like, hey, like, you need somebody to catch? Like, I'll catch a few balls for you and help you out with that. And Petey always wanted to run routes. So I'd stinking almost every day was before dinner, like meet up with him and throw in the indoor, just me and him. And just, you know, a 17-year-old from North Georgia and a 24-year-old from South Florida, and couldn't have possibly lived any different lives or have different life experiences. And that's the most incredible thing about college football. And anybody that asks me, that's always what I say. It's the most incredible thing about college football is that there's so many different backgrounds, perspectives, lifestyles that all come together and you're all merged under one roof, one umbrella, one locker room, and you create these bonds that there's no other situation in the world where you would create that bond with that person just out of availability, right? Like,
oh yeah, who else you gonna hang out with? Your teammates. That's all you got,
right, man?
Well, how often am I going to create a close relationship with some dude from California or from Houston? Like, I don't go there. I don't live there. Like,
well, yeah, one of my best friends is Chris Taylor Yamano. We talk every day. I mean, he moved back to Louisville now because his family moved here. But I mean, spring break one year in college, I went out, stayed out at his place. I mean, college football is cool. That's the one thing I do miss. I don't miss practice. I'm sure you won't be missing practice anytime soon either. You'll definitely miss game day and running out of the tunnel the first time. But
yeah,
you know, me and Isaac over there screaming over your shoulder, you won't miss it too much.
I was gonna say it is our duty, Evan, that for Austin P, you leave that with the true fan experience. That is our duty, and not Matt, because Matt's gonna be in the press box eating the cookies, and he never comes down to the level. But we're gonna be there. The thing about us,
hang out with the common people.
We do, and we drink a lot of beer and have a lot of fun and watch a lot of good football. And we will make sure that you'll be sad. I remember asking Isaac the last game of the year, whatever that was, Vince. It's like, you miss it. He's like, yeah, man, I miss it a lot on days like today. But we'll chug a beer and it'll be
especially when y'all are winning 10 games, bro. I went through a 2-10 season. I would have shot somebody for 10 games, man.
Dude, that's what I was like, you know, I think this might be a good one to go out on. You know?
Yeah, right. Go out on a high note. I should have went out on the Heisman Trophy, man. What am I thinking?
Man, incredible stuff. Well, Evan, we can't thank you enough for joining the show. This has been an absolute pleasure to sit down and chat with you. Because we I don't know, I bet you probably didn't know this, but we've been talking about you all season long. Because I mean, again, you don't get to be the team that has the quarterback laying out for a punt, man. That's just fun for a podcast. So thank you again for everything. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you, and best of luck as you get into the world and join us men that are failing at being adults. So you got it, man. You got it, man. But thank you again.
It was fun talking with you guys.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, Evan.